Just when you think that elected Republicans couldn't possibly get any scummier, consider this. A Republican congressman just went on Fox News and said in front of the entire country during a conversation about the California wildfires that the Republican Party and the Trump administration might work together in the future to put conditions on disaster and crisis relief for blue cities and blue states. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got a clip or two to take a look at here, but yeah, the despicableness is more severe than I think a lot of people expected and more brazen, more open. Remember, Trump hasn't even been inaugurated yet. And with all of that in mind, consider this.
People are losing their home insurance coverage for fire because of policies that the state government's doing. And if they want the money, then there should be consequences where they have to change their policies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering if you know, your colleagues from California, these California lawmakers are going to be pushing for, you know, the states prone to disasters to have money allocated toward this, to push for
but California wants the money without changing the policies that are making the problem bad or worse. And I don't see how Republicans could possibly support that. I mean, we support the people that are plagued by disaster, but we have to put pressure on the California government to change course here.
I see. So
again, think of how sinister this is. He even used the word consequences at the beginning of it. There have to be consequences for you to accept disaster and crisis relief from the federal government. We don't want to punish the people, of course not, but we will unless there are conditions that are honored in exchange for the federal government honoring its obligations to the states to provide crisis and disaster relief. Despicable, but we'll continue.
Has there been discussion already about the federal help that's coming to California? And are you saying that there's a little bit of pushback unless you see policy changes?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, how do you do that? Because you don't want to send the message to families, oh, we're not going to take care of you. They certainly didn't have a problem saying that to people in Western North Carolina in the Biden administration. Instead, the Biden administration is, oh, don't worry about it. We're going to take care of everything.
So this guy is so dishonest. He's as dishonest as he is sinister and unempathetic. Yeah, we don't want to send signals to the voters, to the people of California that we're going to dangle crisis and disaster relief over their heads, but that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's start with this. There's so much to unpack here. Again, try to suppress the shudders because he's not even hinting at it. And he's trying to couch it, well, we don't want to hurt people, but we're absolutely willing to in order to crush the Democrats and extract concessions, and there will be consequences. But like, we're not trying to punish you, people. We have your back, but not really. So let's do some fact checks here. Let's talk about North Carolina, my state, where I live. So this was announced back in December. Governor Cooper announces Hurricane Helene federal cost share adjustment is approved. Today, Governor Roy Cooper announced that President Biden has agreed to North Carolina's request to cover 90% of public assistance. Not 9, 90. The federal government typically covers 75% of the cost. The increased federal reimbursement share decreases the financial cost to the state of North Carolina for eligible programs and projects. 90%. Now, as I think some of these articles we're about to take a look at will discuss, when North Carolina suffered a natural disaster during the Trump administration, Donald Trump, we discussed this in previous video, actually rejected the vast majority of Governor Cooper's request. So Biden's giving North Carolina 90%. Donald Trump gave a fraction of that when he was president to the same state. But this Republican wants you to believe that's really Biden. The Biden administration is the one nickel and diming and conditionalizing support. It's crap. Trump refused disaster wildfire aid to California in 2018 because it's a blue state, report says. Former President Donald Trump initially refused to send federal disaster aid to California after devastating wildfires in 2018. By the way, these were like competitive, like as bad as the current wildfires are in California as we speak. These ones were pretty bad too. So just it's like a true apples to apples comparison. After the devastating wildfires in 2018, because of the state's Democratic bent, according to a new report based on interviews with two former White House aides. Politico's E&E News reported Thursday that Mark Harvey, Trump's senior director for resilience policy at the National Security Council at the time, had to convince Donald Trump to provide funding for California wildfire relief by showing him voter polls in Orange County where more people had voted for him than in the entire state of Iowa, almost said Utah. A second former aide confirmed Harvey's statement. As a matter of fact, during the campaign, the Harris campaign put together an ad with these two ex-Trump officials in it. So let's watch the ad.
I worked in the Trump administration.
Never in a million years did I ever think that I'd be working in the White House with a president that didn't care about the American people.
He would suggest not giving disaster relief to states that hadn't voted for him.
I remember one time after a wildfire in California, he wouldn't send relief because it was a Democratic state. So we went as far as looking up how many votes he got in those impacted areas to show him these are people who voted for you. This isn't normal. The job of the president is to protect Americans, regardless of politics.
If Trump's elected again, there'll be no one to stop his worst instincts. You'll have yes men help him implement Project 2025's agenda. Unchecked power, no guardrails.
They will be serving one man. I am voting for Kamala Harris because she will put the safety and security of every American first, whether they voted for her or not.
That's true. That's what the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration has done thus far. That is a stunning indictment of Donald Trump morally and the Republican Party morally as well. So when Warren Davidson suggests that, yes, the Republican legislators will be working with the future Trump administration to conditionalize aid to blue cities and blue states for disaster and crisis relief, we can believe that that is at least likely, at least it's on the table, because it's what Trump has done in the past, or Trump has gestured in that direction. And there was actually a pretty good article written in the Washington Post about this yesterday. Will Trump help blue states in disasters? There's plenty of reason to believe he'll balk at aid for situations like the California wildfires in a second term. He's even said as much. Welcome to the campaign. Well, the big moment. Yes, the big moment. Sorry. A series of disasters and tragedies in recent days and months has been met with a familiar response. Donald Trump quickly politicizing them with misinformation. When Hurricane Helene struck the Southeast in September, Trump falsely claimed that President Biden hadn't even spoken with Republican Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, and that the federal disaster relief had been diverted to help undocumented immigrants, among other false claims. When a man drove a truck through a crowd in New Orleans early New Year's Day, killing 14 people, Trump repeatedly linked it with Biden's border policies, even though it turned out the suspect was an American born from Texas. Amid historic wildfires in California right now, Trump has begun making a series of claims about California Governor Gavin Newsom's water management that experts say aren't supported by the facts, among other dubious claims. Trump has also claimed Biden has left FEMA with no money, adding, "This is what Joe Biden is leaving me. Thanks, Joe." It's fair game to question a politician's handling of a tragedy. It comes with the territory. But Trump's track record, dating back much further than Helene, shows he views these as political opportunities to be quickly exploited and twisted. Trump is known for his bare-knuckle brand of politics, but it is rarely as pronounced as when disaster strikes. But even all of that could be dismissed as mere words. It shouldn't be, by the way, and anyone who does so it's just absolutely disgusting. Words matter from powerful people, and if you care about the words spoken by Democrats, you should care about the words spoken by Republicans. The more pertinent question is what Trump, who will soon have power over federal disaster response, might actually do in such circumstances. History suggests that could include tying disaster aid in situations such as the California wildfires to his personal politics, and even balking at helping those he disagrees with politically. And then it goes on to talk about some of what we just mentioned. Late in the 2024 campaign, a former top official in Trump's National Security Council, Mike Harvey, told Politico that Trump initially refused to provide aid for the 2018 California wildfires until aides told him how many of his supporters lived in the affected area. A month before that report, Trump publicly threatened that his incoming administration won't give Gavin Newsom the money to put out all his fires if Newsom didn't divert more water for farmers. Trump, as president in 2019, also publicly threatened to cut off California wildfire aid, saying every year as the fires rage and California burns, it's the same thing, and then he comes to the federal government for $, help, no more. Trump's preference for sending money to red areas over blue ones has been evident at other points too. After a series of 2018 hurricanes, Trump told officials he didn't want a single dollar going to the especially hard-hit Puerto Rico, the Washington Post reported, and that he wanted more money to instead go to Florida and Texas. After the COVID pandemic hit, Trump repeatedly questioned providing aid to Democratic-run areas, which were more severely impacted early on. He called a relief bill, quote, a big bailout for badly run Democratic cities and states. Trump would surely argue this is about good governance, about not sending money to places that don't spend it well and incentivizing people like Newsom to be better prepared. But his grasp of the facts in these situations suggests his view is often skewed and that he often distills these things down to blue, bad, red, good, regardless of the evidence. Multiple Trump administration aides have said that's effectively what it amounts to. Quote, Trump absolutely didn't want to give aid to California or Puerto Rico purely for partisan politics because they didn't vote for him. Kevin Carroll, a former senior counselor to Donald Trump's then Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly, told The Guardian in October. Harvey, former Mike Pence aide Olivia Troy, and former Trump White House press secretary Stephanie Grisham backed up that account. Grisham told the New York Times around the same time that Trump, quote, did that basically if there ever was disaster and state needed disaster aid. One of his first questions would be, are they my people? Trump's campaign responded, none of this is true and nothing more than a fabricated story from someone's demented imagination. In and out of office, Trump has shown up to provide aid and relief to Americans in the wake of natural disasters. But even prominent Republican office holders have subtly gestured in this direction. When Trump balked for months in 2020 at Washington Governor Jay Inslee's request for wildfire aid after extensive feuding with Inslee, Representative Kathy McMorris Rodgers of Washington suggested Trump set aside personal politics. Despite our governor's bad faith personal vendetta against your administration, people in my district need support, and I implore you to move forward in providing it to those who have been impacted by devastating wildfires in our region, McMorris Rodgers wrote. After Trump left office, McMorris Rodgers introduced a bill that would have required presidents to respond to such disaster aid requests within 30 days. Ron DeSantis, in his 2023 book, also recounted how a discussion of hurricane aid to Florida's panhandle centered on his political support for Trump. Quote, this is Trump country, and they need your help, DeSantis said he told Trump. They love me in the panhandle, Trump replied, according to DeSantis. I must have won 90% of the vote out there. Huge crowds. What do they need? Trump soon signed an order directing FEMA to pay 100% of most disaster costs in Florida, after 2 months earlier issuing a veto threat over a similar proposal for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, Politico reported. That aside, the practical effect of all of this on Trump's first-term record is debatable. The report from Politico's E&E noted that more than 80% of disaster requests that Trump denied, many of them for relatively minor disasters, came in states he had won in 2016. But what we saw in Trump's first term is that he often had people around him that would check his impulses and massage things in a certain direction, similar to how Harvey described things. There will be fewer of those people in his second term as Trump places more of an emphasis on hiring loyalists. As the Washington Post reported before the election, there's also plenty of evidence that Trump feels emboldened to be even more transactional. Even if you set all of that aside, Trump has very publicly threatened to withhold aid from California under the kind of tragic circumstances that have now come to pass. Expect this to be a significant subplot of his second term. So, that's where we are, folks. Elected Republicans, not merely threatening, but actually joining Donald Trump's threat that they will conditionalize disaster and crisis relief to blue cities and blue states, even if that means the voters suffer the consequences. Despicable stuff. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.